Welcome to More Than Dentistry, where your hosts Evert and Waldo discuss life, dentistry, and everything in between with dentists around the world.
Hello and welcome to the More Than Dentistry podcast.
Welcome to the More Than Dentistry podcast. Today we're interviewing Nathan Rogerson. Am I pronouncing it right?
That's it.
Right. Nathan is a clinical psychologist and a life coach, and he's my personal life coach. Would you say life coach, or how do you define yourself?
I usually call myself a professional coach because I work with usually professional people, so either those in the health professionals, oh dear, I'm going to have to just roll with it.
Just go with it.
Either work with people in the corporate world, so with business executives or with health professionals and with entrepreneurs. But usually, in coaching today, things have become quite vague, and so anyone can call themselves a life coach. So I usually just try and differentiate myself a bit by calling myself a professional coach. And I also do a lot of business coaching. So usually people call me a business coach or a personal or professional coach.
Okay, and I just want to explain my relationship with Nathan. He's my professional coach. I met him a few years ago. When did we meet? About 2010 or 2011 probably.
Yeah,
I think we first met at a life group, a family group.
Yes.
We got marriage counseling from
Yeah.
Nathan. He's also a clinical psychologist, a trained clinical psychologist. So that's how I met you the first time. And then you went abroad for a while.
Yes, worked in Ireland, moved into healthcare management, so I was running hospitals and then started a hospital in Ireland and came back after doing that. So I've ticked those boxes in terms of things that I wanted to do professionally, and also realized that my shift was about coming back to South Africa and moving into the coaching environment.
Okay, so you've been abroad and you've seen the other side. I think a lot of young people want to think about moving abroad somewhere in Australia, New Zealand, or England, or whatever. So, what's your experience regarding that?
Yeah, I think it's all about the mindset that people have when they move. Over the last, I'd say, 15 years, I've worked with lots of people that have moved abroad, and those who've navigated that season successfully, and also seen those who haven't made that shift work. So mindset is a big thing there. Usually if people put themselves under a lot of pressure in terms of going overseas and now have to make that work, that usually backfires. But if they take a different approach to going overseas, seeing it as an adventure, as learning things, as upskilling in a different culture and having fun, that usually is a better mindset to go with. You just got more options than the idea of being able to come back to South Africa or adapt and go with things as they unfold. There's just a lot more resilience there, whereas when people put all their eggs in one basket, going to Australia, now this is going to work and I've got this one shot. In psychology, we've got a scale for stress, and it rates out of 100 points. And the three highest things, the first one is death of your significant other, which rates at I think like 95. Then it's divorce, which is like 92. And then moving abroad is the third highest, like immigration or those kind of things.
And where do you think dentistry is on the scale?
I think that's a 99.
Okay, so Waldo has been awful quiet. He's also here at the podcast today. Waldo, what do you think about life coaching?
Well, I was looking for a life coach or someone to go and help me, and my biggest problem that I had was navigating between who is going to help me. Is it going to be a psychologist, a life coach, a professional coach, a psychiatrist? I screwed up enough. So how can someone make the decision except for just having a referral from someone else to say, this is maybe someone that can help me with not just my problems, but with my business, with navigating life a little bit better?
Yeah, usually one of the first things that people do is they mistake or don't understand the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor that's then specialized in psychiatry, and his focus is psychodiagnostics and psychopharmacology. So usually the referral to a psychiatrist is when there's a real need for, pharmacological intervention, when a depression or a problem is really entrenched and you're needing to bring everything to bear for that. So that would be generally the role that a psychiatrist would play, although depending on the psychiatrist, a number of psychiatrists also are skilled in psychotherapy and would be able to work with you from that side. Clinical psychologist, similar to a psychiatrist, usually is highly skilled in intervening when there's a significant problem and to help people get out of crisis. So that's their focus. The person's functioning has really been impaired and they need help. And so a psychologist's role is to help them get out of that danger zone, out of the red, and back into a more functioning zone, like maybe back into orange. I think the role of coaching is different because coaching takes the approach that the intervention is based on where there's still a reasonable level of functioning, but people are wanting to be more proactive in their lives and to move their lives forward and move from, like, let's say, an orange zone into a green zone or into just a zone of really improved functioning and wellness. So there's different areas of focus that these different professionals have, although there is some kind of cross-pollination in people. Those zones do also blur. But in terms of deciding who you want to go and see, I always say to people, it's always about the fit and being able to know what your needs are, what you're looking for out of the therapeutic or coaching relationship, and then finding someone that you develop good rapport with. Because at the end of the day, it's all about a working relationship and being able to see, can the two of you work well together? Is there good synergy? Is there good engagement? Is there a good amount of just sense that you're being drawn to a higher place than you would have been if you were just working independently? So that's usually what I say to people. Just give the relationship a feel. If you're looking for a coach, generally someone who's got coaching experience, who's certified in some way, because in the coaching landscape in South Africa, there isn't a lot of rigorous certification. So it's important to find out, what's your background, what's your experience, what's your certification or your qualifications, and what's your resume look like. Who do you work with? What's your client load typically like? So when people engage me and they ask me those kind of questions, I'm able to respond that my clients are predominantly professional or entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs who are trying to navigate this new world that we live in, this VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and angry, and how to navigate those challenges in a way that seeks out the opportunities. So and then I of course I've just got a number of clients that are also medical professionals, and so with my background as a clinical psychologist and having worked in healthcare and been at senior levels of management, I think I've just got a bit of a niche understanding of the challenges that health professionals face in terms of building their practices, in working in the healthcare environment, and in balancing all the balls that we have to, family, career, personal growth, all these things. It's quite a radical thing to do.
But the one thing young dentists sometimes struggle with is you either on the one side where you're struggling to navigate, I need to get more patients, I'm getting anxious because things are maybe not 100% how I want it in the practice, and then from going there to start getting a good patient base, actually becoming successful, and now you are successful, and now you don't know what to do, and you almost have this, what do they call it, like a imposter syndrome, where on the other side, and I think I'm good enough, but I don't feel I'm good enough. Can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, it's a very common phenomenon. I mean, a lot of people are talking about that sense of, the imposter syndrome and what that's about. And I think that all comes back to identity. And so in my work with people, that's often a focus that we have, is how to integrate a sense of self in a way that overcomes that sense of inadequacy or that sense of fear around failure, because the stakes are often high. You've invested a lot into building practice, to making this work, and so there's naturally quite a high level of anxiety that's based on what happens if this isn't sustainable, what happens if I really have a setback, and those kinds of anxieties I think are normal, but they've got to be processed, and that's what the coaching space does. It allows people to just process through their concerns, their inadequacies, their sense of possible failure, and then just to upskill them in basic areas. I mean, as health professionals, that's the one area that I think is really missing, is we all, from psychologists to doctors, dentists, we actually we run practices. And I've often said, I studied for 8 years, and I can't remember how much of my course and training over that time focused on successfully positioning and running my own practice, on building a client base, on marketing it, on understanding the basic principles of financial management around running your own small company. So it's a massive deficit that I feel in terms of the health professions for those of us who go into working for ourselves, running our own practices, and that's where a coach can play a real valuable role as being someone who comes alongside to say, hey, this is what I've seen works, this is a helpful approach, let's be creative with this, these are some of the fundamentals that we need to get right. And effectively, you create just a synergetic team, because for any organization to be effective, there's usually a group of people behind the scene that are making it work. And so for younger dentists, I think it's about also embracing that team methodology, that it's not just about you having to make this work well. It's about you developing your inner team. It's about you developing your own core team around you. So having like the right financial advice, having the right accountant on your team, having the right legal advice, even in terms of HR or people that you're employing, having a coach who's in the trenches with you and who you can bounce ideas off. I think a lot of the time that's what my primary role is as a soundboard, and just to help people think about their options, particularly around key decisions, and to how to make those decisions well, and not make them in a vacuum, not make them in isolation.
Yeah, because they actually know the answer. They just need to talk to someone to actually hear themselves speak.
Yes, and that's true, but also just to get another perspective, because sometimes, I mean, I know I'm not aware of all of my blind spots, and so my coach, that's what he helps also indicate for me, is like, Nathan, that's your blind spot. Don't remember that, and he helps kind of draw me forward and help me make sure that I'm not making decisions that will disadvantage me and my practice and my work.
Let's talk maybe a little bit about getting. What do you feel is a good place to have daily habits? Is it something that you recommend? And people either cope with a good daily practice, or their daily practice is they practice the whole day, they get home and they smash a bottle of wine and they go to sleep, and they just repeat that with a headache every day.
Yeah, that's a key focus when I work with people, and a key area of intervention within the coaching field is to install and establish key, healthy daily habits. So how you start your day and how you end your day are two key times of the day, and it's strange because those two markers are outside of the normal work that you do, and yet they influence the quality of the work that we do during the course of the day. And so being proactive in developing your early morning routine, and then how you shut your day down, I call it how you bring your plane in for landing, is really vital for how you are able to sustain energy levels, how effectively you are able to work. the following day and through the upcoming years and seasons of life. And so even if we just focus on your morning routine and rhythm and build in some healthy practices there, from meditation or just some quiet time, reflecting, anticipating the day, just doing some mindfulness-based work, or even just being able to do a little bit of planning before the day starts so that you've got an idea of what it looks like and is going to feel like. And then also exercise in the morning can be incredibly helpful in terms of positioning the brain optimally for engagement during the day. And also, we know exercise is still the best antidepressant on the market. Yeah. It buffers stress like nothing under the sun, and it's incredibly helpful for detoxification. So exercise is one of those things that in an increasingly busy world, it's incredible how, if I just get some of my clients active physically with sustainable, consistent exercise, how that improves their mindset. And then, like you say, how do close off a day? And you've had a stressful day, it's been intense. What helps you kind of finish the day off well without having to lean into things that can be potentially damaging and disruptive? So, like drinking in the evening, we know that that impairs your sleep. That also, it's something that's best left to doing in a controlled manner, maybe over a weekend or something, but to use it as your stress modulation system during the week is generally not helpful. So what then is your stress buffering practice for the evening? And what are you doing to just consolidate your day and to finish it well? And if
like
you're able
sleep
to
hygiene and
yeah. I mean, the sleep studies that are coming out now are just remarkable around showing the importance of sleep. And I think generally over the last 50 years, we've been losing sleep with a rate of, I think it's 0.54 hours every decade. Sure. And statistically, that's very significant. Effectively, we're a sleep-deprived society now. And the impact of technology has been massive in that way, in terms of being always on, the effect of blue light and always being on our devices, and just what impact that has on sleep. And we know that now from our sleep studies that sleep is incredibly important for the brain. What's happening when you sleep is just incredible, from the assimilation and integration of your memory systems to the real activation of neurogenesis and the optimization of your cognitive parts of your brain in terms of refreshing, replenishing, and getting ready for the day ahead. So when you sleep, your brain's actually more at work than it is when you're awake in key areas. And so if you jeopardize the quality of your sleep, you adversely affect mental health, you adversely affect performance, physical health is impaired. It just has a knock-on effect. So usually that's one of the simple things. Like if I help some of my clients just reclaim effective, healthy, replenishing sleep, their general wellness and work engagement improves quite significantly. And they're like, I can't believe that. They were still all about the sleep. It's like, it matters more than we really believe.
The biggest problem I think we all have is just catching the low-hanging fruit. We always want a gimmick or a complex way of going about life, and it's usually just the basic stuff that gets us going by much better.
And it is that. And what I say to my clients is, I say it's the simple things that count, but just because they're simple doesn't mean that they're easy to do. Yeah. And when you start talking about doing these simple things in a consolidated and sustainable way, that's not easy at all. In fact, that becomes quite a complex and difficult achievement in the modern world. And in fact, it's quite rare that I find people that have these very basic health habits that are well established and integrated into their lifestyle in a way that drives their effectiveness throughout the year. Often they have one or two things, and then there's some atrophy or attrition in key areas. But getting the basics right now is far more difficult than what it used to be. But it is those things. It isn't rocket science, but we can't do these things alone. There's too many things that are working against us in terms of getting the basics right. And often it's about establishing a meaningful vision for building your life around these simple habits and making sure that they are priorities. And, you know, work itself is the priority, and then trying to catch up with other things, and then just becoming overwhelmed with stress becomes a massive hazard in life. And then the simple things just become very inaccessible to people. And that's when I think before things get into that orange or red zone, that's why the coaching work is so helpful, because it's around saying, let's get the basics right and let's work together towards re-establishing them in your life.
Nathan, I just think personally, let's get it back to the 25 to 30-year-old. The problem that they've got is they don't have a lot of excess cash lying around. They're finding their feet in dentistry.
Yeah.
So they're kind of falling around there, trying to establish themselves there. They're not thinking about, they don't even know they're stressing, so they're not thinking about stress management. So where do you think a guy should start off? What's the red lights that should tell you maybe to see a coach or to start thinking about that?
I even think in today's world, I think everyone's at risk, so it's almost not about even waiting for the red light, but I would even suggest it just as a way to work, like to embrace this way of working from the beginning. So you've got that support and you've got that way of working collaboratively from early in your career, and that you build it in as a way of being the professional that you are. And I mean, I think in terms of concerns or hazards, of course, fatigue, just sensing like, you know, you're not at your best. Anything that's related to ongoing negative thoughts or ruminations, or just feeling, you know, you're not significantly depressed, but you can just feel like, you know, life is not as fun as it used to be, and, you know, what am I doing this all for? And maybe even a sense of wanting to escape. That's usually a sense that things aren't going all that well. On the resource side, I think it's also about then saying where are you going to invest your money in a way that'll have the best returns. So coaching is an expensive practice, and I always say to people, it's also you know what you pay for, you get. It's you can access very low level life coaches who aren't going to charge a lot, but often the quality of their work is also poor. And so I think just saying like, how can I see this as a priority investment? How can I maybe just hedge some resources for that, and know that if the coaching work is effective, it should be more than paying for itself. So that's sometimes what I say to my clients is, okay, this is what it's going to cost for like 6 months of coaching, but what we want to do is we want to track your professional income and see if there's any improvements. And usually, if I'm working well with people outside of the, you know, real massive setbacks that they might have, there should be an improvement in their functioning, which should have an impact on how they are engaging with clients, the work that they're doing, and so their revenue should be increasing. So that's a key thing, and that's one of the things always in business coaching is the coaching work should pay for itself, because it should be adding enough value to more than accommodate the cost that it's taking. So I think if you're young and you have that idea, okay, this isn't an extra additional cost, it's an investment, but the return on investment should more than account for it. And if it's not, then I would, you know, have some questions around maybe the fit between you and your coach, and looking elsewhere, or just being able to say, no, our expectation of this work is that it really adds value and that it affects bottom line, because it's got to pay for itself somehow.
Yeah. I didn't ask you before to prepare for this, but maybe a couple of books. What kind of books would you recommend for people that really can't afford a coach, but they want to buy a book or two just to start off with their mental journey? What kind of books do you recommend?
I'm a big fan of Daniel Pink. So he's a consulting psychologist, and he writes stuff in a very accessible way, and I use all of his stuff in my coaching work. So he wrote a book called Drive, which is incredible in terms of helping us understand what motivates us, and he's one of these psychologists that also looks at some of the myths, and with all the new advances in neuroscience and in our research, he's able to say this is what we used to think really helped promote motivation, and this is what's really true. So he does some myth busting. His work is very memorable. You're able to just stay with it. He presents it in a way that is accessible. He wrote a book called To Sell is Human. And it's like, what's a psychologist writing this book about selling? And I read it, and it's exactly that. He says in today's age, everyone is in the business of selling and marketing. It's just, if you're going to be successful in life now, you've got to be able to understand your brand, you've got to be able to understand what it is that you're doing, and you've got to be able to sell. Gone are the days that you could just outsource that. You've got to own it. And so he positions what that looks like in the modern world today in a very accessible way. So I loved that book. The book that stood out for me the most this year is his book, When, and that's all about understanding the science of timing. And so we were talking around making strategic shifts in your morning routine or evening routine. A lot of that's dependent on your own personal chronobiology and being able to understand that it's not all the same for all people. You know, our bodies are wired differently, so it depends if you're an early riser, or if you're more effective in the mid-morning, or if you're far more effective in the evening, matching key disciplines and habits to the times that you're most effective. And something that stood out for me is his even research on when doing rigorous coaching or psychotherapy work is usually the worst. And all our researchers looked at this sort of 2 to 3 o'clock session in the afternoon, where it's that post lunch parasympathetic down, like your body's just at a place of being a bit fatigued after the morning work, and it's now shifted to digestion. You're a bit also just, you're running on fumes a little bit, and how unhelpful it is to position important work in that period of time. The research has been so powerful that even in the States and Europe, they've completely moved and repositioned key surgery out of that time. It just doesn't happen at that time, because all the data confirms how risky it is to do intricate surgical procedures during a time when you're not at your best. The implication has also been there for the legal field, that to do key legal work in terms of sentencing in the afternoon, very hazardous. The guys get really rough. Their sentencing's more severe during that time, just based on chronobiology. And so it's quite mind-blowing, this research. So I suggest my clients get stuck into that, and anyone who's wanting to start with upskilling themselves, connecting with good research, and understanding the power of psychology, mindsets. Daniel Pink's stuff is just, it's all good.
Nathan, I think, and Valdo, you probably know, that the successful people are using coaches, not the unsuccessful people. And that's quite a scary thought, actually, that the people that actually is doing it right is getting coaches, and the people that's not doing right, maybe they don't even have a clue that they need the coaches. So if you want to be successful, do what the successful people do and start looking into getting something like a coach or getting training, because there's no point where you arrive and you know everything and you've got everything and everything works. You've always got to upskill yourself, and you've always got to learn more. And
that's one of the things that almost for... even if I think back on my own personal journey, one of the things that I regret is not getting a personal coach for myself when I was younger. The whole trajectory of my career could have also been different if I'd just said, okay, I don't have to make these mistakes myself. I can get the input of someone who's really seen it before, who's really helpful in terms of working with people. So starting earlier is, I think, if I could go back, that would be one of the changes I'd make. I'd get a coach from a younger age. I think things in South Africa are shifting as well. We're about 5 to 10 years behind the Americans and Europeans in terms of the whole kind of coaching field. But people are starting to see that it's there's no stigma attached to working with someone who helps you get better and better. In fact, that's one of the most proactive things that you can do. And so, why not make that investment? Give it a try, give it a shot, and match those who are being successful. So, I mean, the amount of executive coaches that are doing remarkable work in Joburg, Cape Town. You show me a successful entrepreneur or businessman, they've got a great team, and they've usually got a really key coach who's working with them. A lot of the senior manager guys I know, and executive CEOs and that, they start their week on a Monday with their personal, professional executive coach. That's how they start their week. And they see their coach every week because that defines the level and the quality of the work that they're doing. And so I think that is starting to spread. As people talk more openly around how successful they are being, it's usually not a solitary affair. It's like, I've got this guy on my team, and this is what I've done, and this has been helpful, and this is my sort of secret. and
I think this is what this podcasting is doing as well. It opens up more information to people, and we can share what we're doing and how we get successful or unsuccessful in what we do, and more people listen to it, and the more they'll follow advice. I think we try and stick around 30 minutes for the podcast, and we're at the 30-minute mark now. So is there anything else, Waldo, that you want to add?
No, not really. I think this was very helpful. It's the basis of our podcast is having a type of a mentorship for younger dentists, and having someone looking from the outside in. I think it's great having someone like you. Thanks, Nathan.
No, I just want to say Nathan did not pay to be on the podcast. I asked him to be on the podcast. He's my life coach, so we're not doing any paid advertising for Nathan at all. In my experience with Nathan has been amazing. Sometimes I dread waking up at 7 going to him, but every time I've been there, I've felt really revitalized, and I feel that there's something, even if it's a small, stupid little thing. Talk about the fight I had with my wife or something, the fight with my assistant. The other thing he helped me with was my employing my new assistant. He interviewed her for me. So it sounds like stupid little things, but it's things that make a massive impact in your life. So I want to thank you, Nathan, for what you do to me personally. It's really been a nice journey working with you. And Nathan doesn't know this yet, but he offered us a coaching call for the first 3 people to message us on the More Than Dentistry podcast. He's going to do a free coaching call for you guys. So you can say no, Nathan.
Hey, I'm all about making a difference where it counts, and I love the opportunity to also be on a forum like this. So thanks for the invitation. And I love also just paying it forward and being able to give some guys an opportunity like that. So I would more than welcome that. So let's make it happen.
And maybe give us your contact details. Where can they get a hold of you?
Oh, you can just find me on the internet. So it's nathanrogerson.co.za is my website, and all my contact details are there.
Okay. And do you do like a tele?
I do. I've got a couple of clients that I work remotely with, so using Zoom or Skype, and so I'm able to work remotely. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Great. Thanks a lot.